Welcome everyone. We have Michelle here to speak with us about community and the importance. And honestly, like Michelle is like the gatekeeper of WordPress, pretty much. And I know she doesn't like that word, but she, if you want to do anything, or and Maestro will speak to this as well, because the reason that Maestro is here is also because of Michelle. So Michelle's going to talk about the importance of networking and community, and I'm just going to pass it off over to her.
Sounds good. Thank you. I'm going to open up, share my screen, and we'll get started. All right. So I do not like the term gatekeeper. I prefer to keep the gates open. So that's one of the wonderful things about community, is that it should be open to everybody. But let's go ahead and get started and talk about networking, relationship building, and community. So that's me. I'm Michelle. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at StellarWP. I do a whole lot of other things in WordPress as well. Mostly I work with post status, and I do a lot with the open source project, with the photo directory and with community there, WordCamps, etc., and with Big Orange Heart. And yeah, just a lot of different things, a couple podcasts, maybe 4 or 5 podcasts, and really just enjoy what I've been able to build through the years because of networking, relationship building, and community building. If you're interested in following along with what I do in WordPress, you can find me on Twitter at Michelle Ames. So I found this great quote that I really liked by Harvey Mackay, and it's: "My golden rule of networking is simple: don't keep score." Networking is a lot like friendships. If you have a true friendship, you're not keeping score of who did more for the other person. I mean, you're expecting things to be equal for the most part, right? Not like, oh, I paid for lunch twice in a row, it's your turn, or else. I mean, it's not like those kinds of things, or that you have to wait for the other person to text before you can text back. Networking is very much the same way. We get into community because we want to be able to share what we know, learn from other people. There isn't a scorecard. And I kind of liked that quote about it. So then, oops, there we go. So why is networking so important? Well, human connection with like-minded individuals. I was married to a man who thought that what I did was wonderful, but when I would start to talk shop with him, the eyes glazed over, the "oh, that's nice, dear" kind of things came out of the woodwork. And I found that it was really difficult to get excited about work when I didn't have somebody to talk about the things that I was doing. And like, I would build a website and I would send him the link and say, "look at this, I built this, it exists, it's on the web, people can see it." And he would pull it up, look at only the above the fold on the homepage and go, "looks good." Like, but you hardly even looked at it. Whereas with people in WordPress, for example, I can text a link to my friend Marianne, and she'll be like, "looking," and like 10 minutes later, she found the typo on the buried page, deep linked in, because she's really pouring over it to give me good feedback and not just give me that kind of like, "oh, that's great, nice job, honey." So having that human connection with like-minded individuals, people that understand what you're talking about inside and outside of work, that kind of thing is just super valuable. I think especially in tech, where not everybody gets it, right? Like, I could tell my mom what I do and she's so happy for me. She will read all the articles, but she doesn't really understand what it is. And so it's great that she's excited for me, but it's really awesome to be able to talk to people like all of you who get it and totally understand me. Networking is also about business growth. So whether you are a freelancer like I once was, or as I prefer to think of myself, an agency of one, I was always looking for opportunities for business growth, and networking gave me those opportunities. Maybe you're looking for career opportunities. You're looking for an opportunity to work at a bigger company. Networking can help with that too, of course. And also, networking is, like, I like to think, the first step in relationship building. So networking is like making the connections to be able to deepen those connections, and therefore also the first step towards community building. So I say the art of networking because I really think there is an art to it. It isn't just to show up and make the best of it. There's really an art. If you come with purpose, if you come with a few things in mind, you can really move forward in a purposeful way. So the 3 components I have for you today are: be authentic. The most important part of networking, in my opinion, is authenticity. That goes for relationships, that goes for community, Be your true, authentic self. I think that by and large, people are good judges of character. And if you show up with the wrong intentions, you show up not who you authentically are, you're not going to make it very far. You're not going to be able to build those deeper connections and make those relationships happen. So being your authentic self is always best. I always say, I am my true authentic self. I seldom have filters on. If you know me in WordPress at all, you know I stick my foot in my mouth all the time because that's who I am at my core. I make mistakes. I'm okay with making mistakes. I think mistakes help move us forward. But that's how you can see the authenticity in who I am, is that I learn from my mistakes, I move forward, but I don't try to bury them, don't try to cover them up, and don't try to be who I'm not in the community. It'd be super easy to try to fit in more than I do, but that's not going to serve me, and it's not going to serve anybody else in the community either. So authenticity, I think, is absolutely the foundation of networking, relationships, and community. So be your authentic self. For true networking to happen, you actually have to be available. It really is hard to build relationships when somebody's not accessible. We all have that one friend who we love who is never available to meet for lunch, to have a phone call, to grab a drink after work, to go to dinner, to see a movie. Like, that person is in our friend group, but we might not have actually seen them for years. And I'm even talking pre-pandemic, right? So the opportunity to actually be with somebody, make those connections, you actually have to show up. You have to be there and be available, be accessible. That doesn't necessarily mean in person, right? So the WordPress community is global. I have people in the community who are part of the community who I know as friends, as acquaintances, but I actually have people who I consider true friends that I've never still met in person because we don't even live in the same hemisphere necessarily. But those are people that I will text or call or DM or email and just kind of be able to bare my soul with and talk about things personally because I've built that network and I'm available and accessible. So DMs work really well. Calendar links, like when people say, oh, can we get together? I have my Calendly links for half hour and 1 hour on Text Expander so that I can quick with just a couple keystrokes send somebody the calendar so they can make time. I'm making time. They can choose the time that works for them so that we can make those connections together. Participate in events. One of my favorite things, if you know me, you know, WordCamps. I love WordCamps. I love going to them in person. I love attending them online. I love online events like this because it gives me an opportunity to meet more people and to be available to more people and to learn more about the community that I'm involved in and make those network connections. Participating in events is just super important. It's such a huge part of networking. And then also be purposeful, right? So why are you networking? I have a 31-year-old, but when she was little, I was networking with, and I didn't even call it that because I didn't know at the time, but I was networking with other moms, right? Other people who had children the age of my daughter so that we could build those relationships and further the whole, like, finding people that they can play with, finding other moms that I can be like, I can't get her to sleep through the night. What am I going to do? Like, all of that is part of networking. It doesn't just have to be business. It can actually be part of all the different parts of your life. But when we're talking about networking, relationship building, and community building specifically for business, what is your intention? It doesn't mean that you have to, like, tell people, hi, I'm trying to grow my business. But you have to know what your purpose is in arriving into that space. Are you trying to grow your business? Have your elevator speech ready, right? That 30-second, who I am, what I do, all of that, that's important. If people don't know who you are, even if they do know who you are, have something ready to be able to present to people just about who you are so that they feel more comfortable around you, so that it makes it easier for them to tell you who they are. Be able to have that give and take at the beginning of a relationship. Are you looking to grow your community? Then have talking points around that, right? So whatever it is that you're looking for with networking, be purposeful. Have something in mind. Have that kind of like a basic idea of what it is that you want to do and why you're getting involved where you're getting involved and why you're looking to make the connections that you are, because that will help you network in such a better way. I have 3 networking stories I want to share. So I had this, as I said, agency of one called Marketed by Michelle. I didn't know I was going to start a business. I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew is that I knew some basic web design. Of course, I thought I knew more than basic, but at the time, right, I was just less than a year into using WordPress. And I thought I could build some websites. I could help people with social media. I understand this. I have an MBA in marketing. How hard can it be? Anyway, how hard can it be? And I thought, there's an opportunity. I was in between jobs, and I just posted on Facebook, if anybody needs help with marketing, while I'm looking for my next, career move, get in touch with me. I'd be happy to help with your social media, help you get a website up and running, etc. Within a week, I had so many people coming out of the woodwork that I had a business. I quickly pivoted, built the worst website you'll ever see. I'm not even gonna I hope it doesn't even exist on archive.org. That's how bad it was. And I didn't even know what to call it, so I just came up with Marketed by Michelle. I came up with a cute, quick little logo. Luckily, all of those things kind of aligned well, and people resonated well with people. So when I started figuring out, how am I even going to get customers? How am I going to, outside of those original 10 people that reached out to me, how am I going to perpetuate this? How am I going to keep this going? I figured out two things. One, my local chamber of commerce was just a gold mine of people without websites, or people with terrible websites, people with no social presence, businesses with no social presence, I should say, businesses with either no website or really, really dated websites. And so I joined the Chamber of Commerce. It was, I think at that time, it was $75 a year. I could afford $75 a year to put my logo up on a website and attend a monthly meeting. And I think with that first year, I built 5 websites for just my local area, my township, people within that, businesses within that. And that, started that kind of word of mouth, oh, who built your website? Oh, Michelle, Marketed by Michelle. Oh, what's her number? And so that started to perpetuate and building. And that was intentional. I joined the Chamber of Commerce as a networking opportunity to meet with local businesses and share my resources and what I could do for them. The thing about the Chamber of Commerce is there could be 10 web designers in a Chamber of Commerce. There wasn't, but there could be. And bigger chambers actually have a lot of competition that way. But with specific networking groups, like BMI, or I can't even think of a lot of the other ones, we created our own. Some friends of mine, we all got together. We created a networking group with bylaws and the ability to only have one business type per seat. So if I was the web designer in the group, I was the only web designer in the group. And other people would refer to me, or I would build their websites too. And that really, really kept me going and sustained about 5 years worth of business, because that person recommended me and then somebody else recommended me off of that person. And so my network really started to grow that way, just because of joining 2 different organized networking opportunities. Of course, I attended other events and other things like that, but those 2 really were responsible for me being able to not only hang a shingle, but keep it sustainable as long as I did. Which leads me to my next networking story, which is the only reason I don't still have Marketed by Michelle is because I met GiveWP. And I decided I wanted to have a full-time career working in WordPress. And so I met GiveWP first at WordCamp Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. And I saw them and I was like, wow, this is a really cool plugin. Met the guys, they were, Devin and Jason were presenting, I was presenting, we were both speakers there, met them there, built a website for a nonprofit and used GiveWP. Fast forward the next summer, I'm speaking at WordCamp Ottawa, so is Jason. He and I get to talking. I show him the website that I built. At the end of that, I said to him, if you're ever hiring, I would love to think about working for GiveWP. That was 2017. January 2018, I started with a full-time career at GiveWP, all because of those networking steps and being willing to shake hands with people, talk to people, learn what other people were doing, and put myself out there as well. As a result of those kinds of things, and speaking at WordCamps, I ended up at WordCamp US, which is where I signed my contract to begin working at GiveWP. All because of the networking that I had done within the WordPress community to get where I was. When I originally started doing that networking, it was just to learn. I wanted to sponge in as much as I could about how to use WordPress, about different plugins, marketing, all the things that were happening in the WordPress community and the WordPress ecosystem. But building that network within that actually put me to where I am today at StellarWP, which acquired GiveWP 2 years ago. And that's where my career has gone through, all because of those networking. And then my third networking story is we have a local meetup for WordPress, WP Rochester, WPROC. And in 2018, I left a marriage and needed to figure out how I was going to move from our marital home to the apartment that I was renting. I am a person with mobility issues, a disability, and so figuring out how I was going to do all that without a lot of family nearby that could help me was a little bit daunting. So I just posted on Facebook, this is the date I'm moving. If anybody could help, I will be at this location at 5 p.m. on this date. It was amazing. 15 people showed up to help me move. 3 of them were high school friends, and the other 12 were from the WordPress community here in Rochester. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't really worked hard to network and be part of the local Rochester meetup and be one of the coordinators for that meetup. So setting out to do networking at the beginning, simply to start building websites and sell websites, not only allowed me to sustain a career, sustain that business, but grow into the career that I have in the community now, and actually paid me back in a way that I never would have imagined, which is all of those people helping me move. 2 of the women like made my bed. A couple of them went out and bought sheets and towels that I didn't have. It was truly like, I would talk about I'm a crier. Like I was just like at the end of the day, like, oh, it's amazing. There's so many people, so amazing. And it was all because of purposeful networking and being a part of the community, showing up, being present, and being available, and being authentic. The art of relationship building is based on a couple things. You'll never guess, but they are the same 3 things. Be authentic, be available, be purposeful. But let's talk about that in a little bit different way when it comes to building relationships. So when you are building relationships, authenticity matters even more, right? Because you've started with the networking, you have to continue being who your authentic person is. Whether business or otherwise, relationships are built on trust. And trust comes from authenticity. If you are not who you say you are, it is hard for others to trust you. The floor will fall out from under you at some point if you've built scaffolding on things that are not authentic. So be who you say you are and be who you really are. So make sure that who you say you are is who you are, and show up with the intention of being authentic, being your authentic self. That doesn't mean that you have to, blather on about your personal life in a business setting, but maybe it does, right? So whatever is authentic to you, that's the person that needs to show up to build these relationships, because relationships are built on trust, and trust is built out of authenticity. But also you have to be available, right? So you have to show up to be able to build relationships, and you have to follow through on the things that you say you will do. It's not enough to just kind of say, I'm part of this community. I have been parts of communities before where people just stop showing up. And at some point you wonder, do they still align themselves as part of this community? Do they still see our friendship as the way it always did, if they're not showing up authentically as who they are? And so, I know that friendships come and go, relationships kind of ebb and flow, and that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to work. But if you don't show up and do the things that you say you will, you're more likely to actually end those relationships than if you are who you say you are and do the things that you say you will do. So if you're going to build relationships, you have to be present, and you have to be authentic, and you have to follow through on the things that you promise. When it comes to relationship building, specifically in business, you also not just want to be purposeful, but be strategic about it, right? So you want to align yourself with people that you connect with. If you're looking to be a web designer and you're looking for clientele, you're probably not going to find that at WordCamp US, for example. But you're probably going to find it maybe at a local meetup, maybe at a local WordCamp, much more likely at a networking group or a chamber of commerce or other places like that. So be strategic about what you're looking for in building those relationships by where you choose to be to build them. The purpose doesn't have to be super specific, right? So strategy can simply be casting a wide net, kind of to find out where those relationships are and how you want to build them and bring things into you. But it could be very specific. It could be that you're looking to build relationships to build investors. Maybe you are looking to be acquired or to acquire within the ecosystem. And building those relationships is part of that process and starting that journey of getting things moving forward that way. So be purposeful, be strategic, again, be available and be authentic. So here are two stories about relationship building. The first is WP Coffee Talk and Groundhogg. Adrian, I don't know if you're still sitting in here, but Adrian and I met because he said, hey, I'd love to be on your podcast. And I was like, hey, let's have you on the podcast. And so I interviewed Adrian. I asked everybody the same set of questions on WP Coffee Talk. And I have a little bit of a hiatus. We have more episodes coming out this year, I promise. But the whole idea is everybody that comes to the show gets asked the same set of questions. I asked Adrian the same set of questions that I asked Matt Mullenweg when he was on the show, because that lends authenticity too, right? And I call it the great equalizer. If everybody's asking the same questions, we can learn from people in the same way. Well, I am today here at Groundhog Day because Adrian and I built that relationship through having those conversations at WP Coffee Talk. And that allowed us to know and trust one another, that he trusted me by sharing his story with me, and then I trusted him to be part of today. And so the relationship building really worked beneficially for both of us. The other thing is, the other relationship building story that worked really well for me was I have been a part of Big Orange Heart for since it was WP and up, before we changed the names a few years back. And I started doing some volunteer work. I was working for Give WP at the time. I know fundraising, I knew Give, and I wanted to be able to be helpful. So I started volunteering my time with Big Orange Heart. Over time, I got to be part of the board. And at the time, Corey Miller was on the board as well. He was the president of the board as I was being brought into the board. And Corey and I forged a working relationship that was based in trust and authenticity and purpose. And when he bought the full shares of Post Status, he came to me and said, I would love for you to be on the Post Status team. And so now I get to also tell stories through the blog there. I get to be part of the community building that happens at Post Status. And I get to do all of that within the job that I do at StellarWP as part of community building as well. So building those relationships without even knowing specifically what you're looking to build, you will start to build those connections, make those connections that can catapult you into directions that maybe you never even dreamed of, but that certainly can be fulfilling personally and even helpful to the whole community. So the work that I do in the community is because I did that networking, and then I focused on relationship building, not just with people, but within their specific communities as well. And so there's lots of ways that you can look to do that for yourself too. And that brings us to the art of community building. I'm about to surprise you because I don't have the same three pillars here. The art of community building is a little bit more in depth. So it's not just about me now. It's not just about the connections that I make or the people that I've made those connections and built those relationships with. Now it's a bigger community. It's a bigger group of people. It isn't one-on-one anymore. It's an us. And so the first one is to be there. And what I mean by there is you need to decide where there is. For many groups, and I know we probably all are on there, there's a lot of Facebook groups, right? So a lot of businesses and a lot of communities build community through a Facebook group. And starting one is very different than just maintaining one and stepping into that kind of role. I've done both. I was at the very first day when we launched the Give WP community on Facebook and started to grow that. And then I've also stepped into roles in admin at other Facebook groups too, like LearnDash, where we have over 20,000 members of that community. So you need to decide where there is. So maybe it's Facebook. Maybe it's building a Slack community. So we don't have, at Post Status, we don't have a Facebook group, but we do have a very active Slack community. And so there's lots of opportunities to look in different places, figure out where your community lives, and that's where you should build your community around it, build your space. Where are your followers? Where would you find them? And for a lot of places, like I said, that might be Facebook. And there's a lot of WordPress groups on Facebook for different levels, different things like e-commerce groups, for example, and then very, very specific business specific and plugin specific to be able to build community around those things. You also, though, it's not just enough to say, great, we have this space, we've built this Facebook group, let's just like sit back and watch it happen, because that doesn't ever happen, right? If you build it, they will come. Only works in the movies. It's not the same situation. You actually have to put a lot of work into growing that community, whether it's through your marketing, you've got people coming and going, through the marketing that you do. Maybe you've got it in a footer of emails on your support channel. So every time a support email goes out, it says join our Facebook group, and it gives a link to be able to do that. You have to actively participate in it once people arrive as well. And so active participation in your Facebook group or in your Slack group or wherever you've built your community is super important. If you aren't in there actively every day, being a part of it, watching, answering questions, priming the pump with questions, all of those different things, basically, to borrow a phrase, like the inmates run the asylum. So you really need to be in there, be present, and be the owner of the community by being active and a participating role within it. You also have to be kind of strict. So if I love that Will Rogers, if the good fences make good neighbors, well, good rules and boundaries are what make good community as well. So if you have a Facebook group, have very well written out codes of conduct for within that group, which will then allow the group dynamics to work as they should. So I've written a bunch of different things. I've written the back story of how we should be managing communities. I've got documentation on that for the different communities I'm in. I've put out a lot of that publicly forward. So what does the community see as far as communication and involvement, and what they can and cannot do? For example, most Facebook groups, if there's a no promotional, right? So if you're part of, I don't know, let's say that I'm just going to make something up. So let's say that you have a plugin that does XYZ. You have a group built around it. You probably have a no promotional rule, or should, because otherwise it's just going to turn into a giant sales page. And the last thing you want is a giant sales page. Usually there's a rule about not cold DMing somebody, so that you can't just start to direct sell to the people in your community group as well. So building those rules actually helps create the boundaries that make for a healthy community. In a physical community like your township, there are laws, there are rules and regulations that happen within a town. That is what keeps order. And the same thing is true of a virtual community. You need to have a way that keeps order, but still allows people to be expressive, be authentic, and have those conversations around your product and using your product or your service that really help build that. So to build a community, you must, and I can't stress this enough, have a product or service that is worth building a community around. If your product is not developed enough to build that community, then that community is going to turn into a giant free-for-all support request. And so the last thing you want is to have a community that all they're doing is complaining about the product or service that you have. I've seen it in other groups. I've seen where it just turns into bashing your product or your service, and that is not something that's healthy anywhere. You have support tickets for that. You have forums for that. That's part of the rules and regulations that go into effect, is that this is not a support community. This is a shared experience community. You can share your best practices. You could ask a question about how to use the product of other users in the product, but it isn't a, hey, this broke on my site. How do I fix it? Because that's just going to turn into something that's not really community building. That's just turns into then a support forum. But having that product and that service ready to build the community around is very important, and having things that people would want to share experiences about. Shared experiences build community. If it's your local town, the shared experience is that you live in the same place. If it is an online community, the shared experience is around your product or your service. So think about that when you go forward. Be knowledgeable, not only about your particular product or service, but how it works in the ecosystem, how it works with other people. The people that are part of your community, are part of your business, that are running the community, need to understand how your product or your service works. They don't necessarily have to be developers. I'm not a developer. They don't need to know how to answer basic questions or know who to go to get those questions answered, to be able to bring that back to the community. So be knowledgeable about what it is that you're talking about. If everybody's constantly saying, I don't know, let me check, then you're probably not ready to actually have a product or service community at this point. Like I said, find a common area, whether that's Facebook, Slack, wherever that is. We've had lots of places come and go over the years. There was, I think it was called Circle. There's, I think I just heard of a new one called Matrix, maybe not new, due to be called Matrix. Wherever it is that you build your common area, make sure that there's something there. For personal communities, so like people say, oh, Michelle, you've built such a great community. For me, it's Twitter, right? So I don't have like a space that's like, let's all come and talk about Michelle, because that's weird. Nobody wants to do that. I don't want to do that. But building community can be, for personal brand, can be where you show up. So for me, it's Twitter. Twitter is a bit of a chaotic mess right now. I think it's starting to straighten out a little bit, but it's not as good as it used to be. I'm not sure that I'm excited about Mastodon either. Wherever you end up, wherever your community is, make sure that that's where you're showing up and you are presenting and you're communicating and sharing on the regular. For a business, back to that business part, if you're going to build a community, you also have to show the human part of the business or brand. Within a community, you can interact as the product. You can interact as the business name or the service or the logo, however you want to think about it. But that is not showing the humans behind what makes a community. So if you are going to build a community, make sure that that your CEO at least has a presence in there, or your CTO, whoever it is, right? Whoever is the face of the company should be in there. You should have other parts of the community, other workers that are in there. Make them, if they're not admins, at least make them moderators. Give them some credential behind who they are within the community to be able to represent you and represent you well. That shows the humanity behind your brand. People want to interact with people. They don't want to interact with this unknown name, brand name. Like I said, have established rules of conduct. I don't think I have to go over that anymore. Moderate and mediate. So if you have established rules of conduct and people are breaking them, you need to step in and do something about it. I promise you, people will report those things. Every group I'm in that I'm a moderator of gets reported content at least once a week, maybe sometimes more frequently, depending on the size of the group and how active the group is. It's not a bad thing, right? Mediation and moderation is important. It's important to have those guys. If you have laws but no police, you don't have laws. So if you have established rules of conduct and you don't have anybody moderating and mediating and making sure that they actually stand, you don't actually have rules of conduct because they're not being upheld. People who moderate those groups and your community need to have empathy. They need to be somebody who is looked on with favor by the community, so that when they do bring that iron hammer down, they aren't seen as being this terrible despot, but instead somebody who said, look, these were the rules, you broke them, this is the consequence, so you can move forward. But not only the rules of conduct, but moderation and mediation. And create engagement. There is so many ways you can create engagement. If all you ever do on social media is put out your latest blog post, are you really engaging with people, or are you just preaching at them? In order to truly engage with people, put out a poll, right? Put out a survey. Ask people questions. At the very least, one of the things that works so well in community is just tell people, like, we're having a pet break. Post pictures of your pets. Pet pictures will come out of the woodwork. People will want to participate, and bonus, it hits the algorithm in a way that people start engaging with you more. So think about those kinds of things. I have a secret that I do. I started doing this on Facebook years ago called, I can't remember exactly what I called it now. Basically, right here and now. I would say right here and now, ... and I would ask a question. And the questions I've learned over the years have a higher success rate of more people answering them if they are brief and ask an opinion. So for example, I once asked the question, right here and now, tell us your favorite clean joke. And I got maybe 5 or 6 people that responded with a joke. Well, to tell a joke means you have to type a lot. And you have to hope that what you're saying, a joke is something that's kind of like perceived as opposed to intended. And so not very many people participated in that. The next week I asked people, what's your favorite jelly bean flavor? And I had almost 200 people respond. 1, because they only had to type a word or 2. And 2, because everybody has an opinion. And your opinion's not wrong, right? If I like cherry jelly beans, but you like the licorice ones, I don't think you're wrong, but we're both valid because your taste is your taste. That got 200 responses. Well, people started responding to everything. I saw that after that, because the more people respond, the better the algorithm serves you in social media. So create engagement that people want to talk about. It doesn't have to be about your product every single time. Sometimes it's just fun stuff that breaks up the day-to-day that people are doing and makes your community more interesting to be involved with. Would I ask that every day? Absolutely not. Will I throw it in there every couple of months, that kind of a question, just to kind of get people talking? Depending on the brand, absolutely. And do I do it on Twitter myself for my own personal brand? All the time. And that's what's fun. I asked the other day in a poll, do you call it pop or do you call it soda or something else? And I got over 200 people responded to the survey and like 30 different responses of why somebody calls it what they do or what the other is if they call it something else. That it creates engagement. More people see what I have to say on Twitter because more people are engaging with it, and then it boosts the algorithm that much more. And the followers, by the way. You will end up with more followers if people see that you have something that they want to see what you say more and more over and again. It isn't enough, again, to have all these things if you aren't dedicating capacity and resources to the care and feeding of your community. You have to have people who are present within it. Do I live in Facebook groups? No. Do I check our Facebook groups daily? Yes. Do I pay attention to when I have notifications about things that have been flagged, new member requests, things like that? Absolutely. And so checking in once or twice a day, engaging with the questions and ideas that people have represented, absolutely so important. Not enough to just build it. Like I said, you have to be there, but your company has to recognize that whoever they're asking to do that, that is part of their job. And so their capacity and the resources that you're sharing through them have to be allocated in a way that's not taking them away from something else and causing them stress and anxiety to do that on top of other things. So if you are dedicating the capacity and resources, everybody should be happy and healthy at the end of the day. And then create incentive for participation. Sometimes the incentive is they want to answer the question, like what their favorite jelly bean flavor is, for example. Sometimes you can do a little thing that says, that we're going to do a giveaway of swag or something if you participate in this survey, or tell us, your favorite thing about our product or service and get entered into a drawing for one of 3, whatever it is, right? An iPad or a hat or anything. People love to participate if there's an incentive to do it. And so make sure that you're providing incentive to be able to participate too, or for people to want to participate. Speaking about WordPress specifically, as of today, and the statistic that I saw online today, is there are around 810 million websites using WordPress as of 2023. 810 million websites, that's a lot of websites. If we say that, let's say there's an average of 2 users per site. Now we know some sites have a lot more users, but then there's me who has 7 sites with just 1 user. So let's just say on an average there might be 2 users. That's 1.62 billion people who are using WordPress, which means there are endless possibilities for networking, relationship building, and community success. My golden rule of networking is simple. Give more than you take, but you'll find that you receive more than you could ever give. We're a little early at the end, but you can find me online. I love tiaras. I think they're fun. I know it's silly, but it's just a lot of fun. So you'll find them on my head or on my desk sometimes. That's the picture. But anyway, you can find me online on Twitter at Michelle Ames. You can email me, michelle@stellarwp.com, and I'm happy to answer questions anytime. So I see there's a chat going on, and I wasn't part of it. So let's see. Let's see what people are saying. Let's see. Maestro, thank you. Mark, you all are so good to me. Let's see. Hate the back and forth of what time you're available. Absolutely. I think having us, it seems impersonal sometimes to just send a calendar link to try to meet up with people. It's such a time saver. When somebody sends me a calendar link and I know I'm not going back and forth in text or DM, it makes me so much happier. And I think other people do too. So even though originally it felt like really impersonal to send a calendar link, it's such a time saver. And I think in today's, today's world, it's just one of those things that makes life a lot easier. Let's see. The local Chamber of Commerce. Yep, Chamber of Commerce is a great way to get started. Absolutely. And let's see, Ottawa, Rochester. Just reading through the comments to see if there's anything to respond to here. You're all so kind to me. Thank you so much. Yes, being available, Adrian says, is also very important for sales. Absolutely. If you are looking to grow your business, all of those things that I talked about, networking, relationship building, and community building, if you're doing it authentically, if you're present, if your product is what it is worth building those relationships around, then it will and should lead to sales. Absolutely. Let's see. Keep looking at the things. We really don't want giant sales community. No, Disha, I agree. So you want to build community around the things that comprise community. Sales should be, it might be one of your reasons for building community, but that's not what your purpose within the community is. Absolutely, 100%. So you don't want people just selling in the community. You don't want you just selling in the community because people will jump ship very quickly. You want to make sure that that's the secondary benefit to having built community around what it is that you do. Let's see. What other tools besides Text Expander do I use? So I'm one of those people, which I bet everybody in here has more than one email account. And they don't all go to the same Gmail. And so I use something called Shift. I think it's like $100 a year to have, and you can add all of your Gmail accounts and calendars into one location, so you don't have to be like on Chrome switching between any of those different personas that you have there, or have multiple tabs open for your email. So I use Shift, and I use Atext is my text expander of choice. And my tip for using Text Expander is not just to have a word that triggers your text expander, but to use a symbol in advance of it. Because, for example, you might want to type the word, I live in Hilton, and if I type the word HI for Hilton, but I start an email that says, "Hi, I'm Michelle," it's going to automatically change to Hilton, I'm Michelle. But if I put, an apostrophe in advance of that, or I put, anything, a slash in advance of that, that's not what I'm usually going to type. So that's my tip for Text Expander, because so many times you're like, I don't want it to say that. But if you put a character in front of whatever it is you want to say, you can also divide out into different ideas of my LearnDash text completers versus my personal text completers, etc. And I use Text Expander for almost everything. If I don't want to have to type it more than once. My phone number is on Text Expander. For example, I can just type the accent and then PH, and my phone number shows right up. It's wonderful. And same thing for email, etc. And then, so the Calendly links are great for that. And then just keeping track. I have Slack on my phone. I have way too much. I'm so involved. I have so many things. But my favorite thing about having all of those apps on my phone to keep me connected to the community is also shutting them down or turning off notifications. So I don't have notifications on for Twitter. I don't have notifications on for Slack. I don't have notifications on for email. I purposely have to go in and check for those things so that I'm not constantly being distracted from wherever I am in my day, because we all know that your phone buzzing or ringing or whatever in your phone will absolutely make that difficult. Do I have a content calendar for my community? I am starting to use Loomly for content for social media. So we are using Loonly. I've built a StellarWP. I've built different calendars for all of our different plugins. So I have a different calendar for Give than I do for Restrict Content Pro, than I do for iThemes, than I do for Cadence or the events calendar, etc. And then I've invited people from those different brands to be able to participate in those calendars. And we set those calendars up for a month at a time to deliver social content out. But then, as I think of things that are interesting to share for each of those, I will go ahead and supplement whatever we've set up in there with whatever pops up in my head at the same time. And I have all those brands on my phone so that I can, at a quick glance, just go ahead and send things out that I want to do. As far as content calendar, other than that, not a whole lot, although for the community, I will think of things in advance. Let's say the LearnDash community, on the first Monday of every month, I put a place where they could put promotional thread. So I start a promotional thread. If they want to sell their add-on, they can do it within that thread, and it has to stay within that thread. It gives people an opportunity to share what they're working on, to share an opportunity for how they can serve the community and still make money without cluttering all of the Facebook group with everybody's sales opportunities. And the other thing I do is a show and tell. So monthly show and tell. It's like, show us your website. What is it that you're working on? So in LearnDash, we ask people to show us their learning, their e-learning site, and then we can see what people are learning about. It gives us an opportunity to put them in as a showcase on our website and in our blog as well. So it gives an opportunity for them and for us. And then I do the weekly welcome. So, we get about anywhere from 80 to 120 new members a week in the LearnDash community. And so every Monday I welcome everybody and ask them to tell us what it is that they do in the community. So, Disha, I don't know if that answered your question enough or not. If you have more questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you, Kathy. Actually, I have several tiaras. It turns out you don't have to be in a beauty pageant to get a tiara. You can go on Amazon or Shein and order those things yourself. So I have tiaras because I think they're fun, and I always wanted to be a princess. So sometimes I'll just pull one off the shelf and wear it around the office for a day, and it just makes me smile. It makes people happy, and that's why I have them in my headshots as well, because it's a fun thing. I am, let's see, I'll put oops, sorry, I turned off my ATEX. See, now you know what my Twitter ATEX would be. Let's try that again. It's not going to show up now. Maybe it won't do it in certain aspects, but my Twitter handle is @MichelleAmes. So you can find me on Twitter there. My DMs are always open. One weird thing about Twitter is it doesn't tell you if somebody that's not connected to you has messaged you, but that's my other recommendation, especially as businesses, is have your Twitter DMs open, because you want a way for people to reach out to you, even if it's to say, look, I've been trying to launch a support ticket, and for some reason, it's spinning, it's hanging up, and they may not know an email to get in touch with you. Have your DMs open. It's not enough to have them open. You have to be checking them regularly. So if you are on your social media support team, make sure that you're checking for messages, because that absolutely is a way to build your community as well. So double check for those. I check that a couple times a day myself across our brands, make sure that if people are messaging us, we are responding to it. And yes, you'll get a lot of spam. It's easy enough to report and block it. So we have a few minutes left. If anybody has more questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Really want to thank you for hanging in there. I know I talk fast, and I will make these slides. I haven't uploaded them yet, but I will upload them to SlideShare. I will tweet out the deck. So if anybody's interested in going back for notes, I will have those for you. And if you do have more questions, DM me anywhere that you find me on Slack or on Twitter. You can email me, michelle@stellarwp.com. I'm always happy to answer questions and serve as a resource for the community. But thank you for being here. All right. If there are no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down, and we'll see you all at the next presentation. I know there's 2 more speakers coming up at 2 o'clock. Don't remember who they are, but we'll see them all soon. So thanks, everybody. Bye.